Yeah, hopefully your day's going well so far. Maybe you've had some coffee, and some tea. Maybe you are not a liquids person, and that is okay. We're here to talk about something maybe a little bit more important than what we all get our day started with. Uh,
Yeah, we're
so
talking about not getting stuck, not getting overwhelmed on sort of big four buckets here for your
Yeah, and
practice.
specifically, I think a lot of times when you're in business, you find yourself in a state of stuckness or being overwhelmed by the business, by the process. And in the journey as a solo practice, and especially as a group practice owner, there are sort of the gutters, if we use a bowling analogy, right? The gutters on either side of the lane that you want to be on to knock down your pins that you can find yourself stuck in. You get in a rut and you get a couple of gutter balls. Well, what are the opportunities for gutter balls? What are the gutters in private practice, and what do you do when you're kind of there? And the first one we talk about a lot, but you can't go far without talking about this because so many practices of all sizes, and I truly mean this, of all sizes, get stuck and overwhelmed by their marketing. And the first thing that we just need to talk about is the fact that your business needs to market itself. And I think one of the biggest reasons why people get stuck and especially overwhelmed by this segment of the business, how do I market my practice? What do I do? What's going to work? Like just the big giant long sort of thread of knotted yarn on this topic, right? You get really overwhelmed and stuck by it because a lot of people think that they don't need it or they don't know how to do it or they want someone else to do it. And sort of this almost acceptance of it's not going away. You have to confront this. You have to build this out in your practice if you want it to be successful. You can't look the other way and expect this part of your business to go well. Is kind of the starting point to confront the problem so we can work through it.
Yeah, I'll add on two extra big ones that I see is most practices don't want to spend on marketing, and I think we need to change that as it's a privilege to be able to spend on marketing. Like we're thinking about how can we get the lowest cost new clients. Like that is the worst way to think about it because then you're just looking at how can I scrape by rather than how can I be absolutely uh, omnipresent. And
Yeah.
so, just scraping by and finding the lowest cost clients is like a way to get lucky, but it's not the way to be massively successful or massively consistent, like so many of you want. And then, so like it costs, and it costs more than you want until it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so, just get over that hump, and it like if you're going to be in private practice for the next 10 years, like you can either do it having fun with a lot of cash or you can do it scraping by for the next 10 years. So I think you need to just like come to terms with it costs more than you want, but it allows you to go bigger and go better. And then as far as marketing goes, there's a million options out there, guys. Just choose two or three things and just get good at them.
Yeah.
Like just choose and do it and do the best that you can and and be the best that you can with those platforms. Learn the limitations, learn how you can maximize them, and just choose. Stop flip flopping. Stop coming up with ways where one platform could be better or the other. Anything can always be better, but if you're stuck in sort of this purgatory of like choosing different things or trying different things or uh, you're just never going to move at the rate that you want to.
100%. I think of this sort of maybe analogy of electricity and gas, the utilities that are needed to run your house. You pay for them daily, weekly, monthly, because that's just what allows you to run and participate in the rest of your household, and especially the things that require those actions. But many of you are like going to the grocery store once a week, buying a bag of ice and putting it in your freezer because you don't want to pay the electricity bill to run the freezer. And you are making things way more difficult on a time level, on a money level. And it might cost more upfront than the $2 bag of ice once a week or whatever, but long term, the amount of hours, the amount of time, the amount of emotional consternation of, oh yeah, I gotta go get that bag of ice, right? The amount of times that, all of your all of your freezer objects melt, right? You lose your caseload because you forgot to get the bag of ice, whatever the equivalent is. Minimum viable marketing kind of produces minimum viable results, if that, in terms of investment. So I think just the biggest thing here is if we treat marketing as a necessity to invest your time in, to invest your process in, it will become more sustainable long term. And there's something that you have to move through instead of move away from in order to solve this bucket of the business. So if you find yourself getting stuck here, own it and own it that this is a necessary juncture of leveling up your private practice if you want to be successful.
I think I have one last one on marketing here, guys. If you want to be a successful business owner, you need to understand marketing at some capacity. And I think too many of you are hasty to offload it. And
Mm.
so learn it, understand why you get attention. Like, why do you get attention? Is it because of your positioning in the marketplace? Is it because of what you're offering, like insurance? Is it because you're in more places? Is it because you're saying the right things to the right people? So marketing,
Yeah.
understand marketing, and the fact that it's not going to go away is massive.
Yeah.
So like don't be so hasty to just offload it. It's a fundamental requirement for a scaled business owner.
You, as a therapist, do not need to know how to market anything. You, as a private practice owner, needs to know how to market your business if you want to have a successful business. And that's the distinction here is I don't believe that great therapists, in order to be great therapists, need to know anything about marketing or any of the other buckets we're going to talk about. These are business growth buckets. If you want your private practice to be successful, you can't or should not get stuck here. Let's talk about category number 2. It should be kind of a quick little thing. Especially cash pay therapists will find that they get stuck on sales. Man, how do people pay my rate? How do I enroll people? How do I convert these clients? How do I get people to not use their insurance? So what keeps someone from getting stuck on a sales process? A little bit similar to the marketing process, if we have to know how to sell our product. And I'll give 2 quick tips here that will move you out of the sales process. Number 1 is it typically takes a scripted sales process to be successful because that means you have some level of awareness of what you're trying to say, what you're trying to move someone through. And so with that, it also usually takes about 50 to 60 times of someone using that sales script or that sales process to be close to being able to be successful at it. So a really good way to get unstuck from your sales process is to write a script and practice a script, not on live sales calls. And so if you're stuck of like, man, am I converting as many clients as I want to, or at the rate that I want? There's a lot of nuances to this, but ask yourself, have I written and practiced the script that I want to sound good at 50 times or more? I'm just going to put that out there and say, if you're stuck in this bucket, that can probably be the number one thing that could efficiently move you into a different set of problems or experiences with sales once you're on the other side of that.
Yeah, I think the mark of a great therapist is someone who can listen really well, synthesize that information, and actually change someone's like way that they think through things, right? You've provided tools, you've provided a new mode for them to think through, a new lens for them to maybe think through, etc. And a great mark for a great salesperson is someone who's listening really, really well and adjusting and making improvements to their process to help people maybe change differently, or make different actions, change the way that they're thinking, change the way that they're walking through things because they now see a new way of doing things. And so I think listening here is key.
Right.
If you're a great salesperson, or if you're struggling with sales, it might be because you're not listening to what people want, and you're not changing in accordance to what they're saying. And so how are you taking these 60 calls, and then how are you adjusting based on those 60 calls? Wow, after 60 calls, I'm really great. I'm feeling confident at my approach. But for some reason, people keep getting hung up on this one thing. The last 10 people I talked to got hung up on this one thing. Maybe I need to change how I explain that one thing.
Yeah. And I'll just say, if you wait to only have your reps have that amount of 50 plus happen on the live calls, if you have 5 consults a month, it's going to take you 10 months of like intentional trying just to maybe sort of get good at sales. But there's also this, if you go to the gym once a month, you're never going to see results from the gym. That's a little bit of sales process as well. Maybe if you take 5 calls a month, it's not enough to actually get good at this category. You're not going to get enough information, enough feedback. So you can either cut this out by doing it yourself, role playing by yourself, listening, recording, getting a feedback loop, or ratcheting up the amount of calls that you take in outbound action. And I think that kind of flows into a place that people get stuck is recruitment. And I think the solution, like, how do I hire top tier great talent to my team? Is it all about like long-term solutions? You have to have a good product. You have to have a good pay structure. You have to be competitive on a number of different fronts in public. But volume is the number one reason why people get stuck in this category. Is you're not doing enough recruitment actions to try and get people into the fold.
Yeah, I think recruiting is kind of like dating, guys. It's like you can be the person that goes out and dates one person one time and you're like, I'm ready to get married. Or you can be the person that's like, I need to go on a lot of dates, or I need to see a lot of people before, I'm not experienced with knowing people in this world. Like, is this person even right for me? So like, find your pacing. Like, if you're like, I'm looking for I'm looking for a great person to be on my team, volume is the way to go here. Like, look for more people, see what works well, see what doesn't work well. And I think recruiting is also one of those things where it's like, if you're in business for the next 10 or 20 years, it's unreasonable to believe that the person you hire in year 1 or 2 is going to be the person that's with you for year 20. Like, people change, people grow. Like, sometimes people don't show up fully as themselves in the hiring process. And so like, it's okay to fire, right? It's okay to hire slow and fire fast. Like, that's what needs to happen for really optimal business growth. Now, I'm not saying don't take on the role of a leader. I'm not saying just execute people. That's not what's happening here. But we're talking about like comfortably growing with people, and we're talking about talking to more people, getting the right people in the organization at the right time, and and uh, and embracing this recruiting process is something that's like living and breathing. It's really similar to marketing in a lot of ways here.
Yeah. And the last piece is like a lot of counselors are really hesitant on spending money to get unstuck, sponsoring the Indeed post, paying a recruiter, doing other actions, running a Facebook ad, whatever it is. But spend money on the problem sometimes is a really direct way to just like move the ball forward. Let's quickly talk about the last juncture, systems and operations. I think there's two reasons why people get stuck implementing systems and operations into their practice that we see really often. And I'll lead us off with the first one, which is just time. Are you putting aside the time to work on the business and not in the business?
This is one of the most interesting things in the world to me. One of my mentors brought this up, but operations is supposed to be expensive, guys. It's supposed to cost money, and it's supposed to maybe even possibly slow things down in your organization. But it does that for a good reason, to maximize your people assets, to maximize your systems and software assets, to maximize your revenue generating assets. Operations exists so that you can leave the business, but you have to make room for it somewhere, and oftentimes you have to make room in your paycheck or in your in the cash that you're bringing in. Ops costs money before it makes you money. Now, I think operations is also one of those things that a small practice should not even look at. It will not make you money until there's enough little baby incremental changes or improvements that you can make across your practice. And so if you're not making like $100,000 a month, bringing in someone to help you with some operations in some capacity, or you focusing your time and energy on the actual operations, might actually just slow things down and muck things up and make it feel like you have a million things on your plate when really you don't. So smaller practices, you don't need to focus too much on the operations. Like, maximizing $10,000 coming into your account looks like making $10,200. It doesn't look like making $30,000 on operations here. But maximizing 1 or 2% on an organization that's making $100,000 a month is like making an extra $10,000. Or $1,000, right? So there's a little bit more cash there when you change like a 1% change. So think of it that way. Don't slow yourself down early is my recommendation. And then when it comes time to look at it, make space for it, and it has to be made in your wallet usually.
And I think just with all of these, whether it's systems and operations, but all of these buckets, we get stuck often when we're just looking at all of these big four buckets of things, for two things that we'll end on. Number one is you don't have the knowledge. So do you know what systems your practice needs if you are at the system stage? Do you know how to recruit? Do you know what your job postings say? Do you know what marketing you should be doing and so forth, right? Do you know the thing? I think a lot of times we know, or at least we know the very next best step, but then it's also the mindset of, am I willing and taking action on this item? Am I executing in this area to actually move myself through and get unstuck? Because a lot of times what happens is I am stuck here, and instead of getting unstuck here, I'm going to go work on this adjacent thing next to it. I'm stuck at a certain area in my private practice. I'm stuck on the marketing piece. Great. I'm going to go develop a product for coaching. Or I'm stuck on the recruitment piece. I'm going to go develop something else not related to recruitment. And you ignore the big fat thing you're stuck on. And you say, great, I can come back to that when I feel like getting unstuck from that area. And you'll go to the area where you feel like you can make progress. Sometimes you need to acquire knowledge. Oftentimes, this shows up in my own life all the time. It's just, great, I actually need to confront the big fat thing that I'm actually stuck on and move through it and figure out how to move through it.
Yeah, I love that. I don't think I have anything to add there.
Guys, don't stay stuck in your business. Get help if you need it. Move through it.